what we're going to do tonight. So let's kick it off with our first speaker, Rick Swygman. Rick and his wife have been parishioners here for about 7 years at St. Monica's. He was an executive and a sales leader in the wealth management industry for about 25 years, but then he changed his career path, and he'll talk about that, I believe, in just a minute. Now he's working as a consultant. He has a big passion for the Catholic faith, Catholic education, and he does mission trips to Nicaragua as well. And he's a fantastic speaker. Great way to kick off this program. So big hand, please, for Mr. Rick Swygman.
Yes? Great. Thank you, Steve. You just ruined it by saying he's a fantastic speaker. But first, I want to thank Steve as well, because he has put a ton of work in this and keeping us all together and aligned and getting things done. And the team working back there in the technology, I was having fun watching them work as much as I was thinking about coming up here. So really glad to be here and honored to be here, especially given the lineup of speakers. There's some phenomenal people, and I just feel quite honored to be brought up here to join them. How many of you were at the talk I did about 2 years ago about purpose? So a handful. So you can leave. You heard it already. No, actually, I'm going to give a similar talk, and I do this talk every so often, mostly pointed towards young fathers. I've talked to a few groups of them. That's where this kind of was born out of. But tonight I'm just going to try to be a little more practical and possibly a little bit more direct than I was in that talk, which was high level. There's three things I really want to go through in the next 25 minutes. One is why purpose, and what are some of the things that are going on in our world that drive the need for purpose. Two, the power of purpose, what defining your purpose can do and some practical application of it. And three, then defining and fulfilling your purpose. So to get started, we there? There we go. I'm going to switch glasses here. These are for reading now. These are going to be for the monitor. This is where I have the eyesight that I have. There we go. I was listening to the radio yesterday after our big inauguration. As you saw, a lot of news about that, a lot of positive, a lot of negative news. But the radio host that I was listening to, he got me thinking. I was driving home, and he said, think about the last 8 years. How did you feel over the last 8 years? And then he said, think about where you were 8 years ago and where we were as a world and a society, where we were 8 years ago and where we are now. And that really got me thinking. And it reminded me of a comment that was, there we go. Comment that was made at a homily a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you were at the 8 o'clock. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago that Father Charles said, and he opened his homily with this, and it really struck me because it was straight and to the point. And he said, Christendom has come to an end. No longer is our society led or influenced by Christian principles. That kind of summed it up to me of really some of the road starting 8 years ago till now. And I don't know about you, but it was challenging as a parent. It was stressful. It has been. And there was a train running that did a lot of things that really impacted our lives and made it hard to parent in various ways, whether young kids or older kids. And that train's still going, but at least, and whether you like President Trump or not, to me, when he won and now he's inaugurated, it was just, it was like we can take a breath for a minute. So we got some clapping going. There was another, there we go, I'm getting used to the clicker here. So what was the driver of all that? And I've got a slide coming up here in a second on some of the details, but I remember in one of the Ablaze sessions, Father Jack said this, and this was another one pretty pointed, and he stressed it. He basically said the ancient serpent is attacking us and our families. aggressively, and that's where we're going. I went the wrong way. So where is this actually? This is changing, this isn't, so I'm going to have to look up here. Okay. So the talks that I do with fathers, there's several things that have come in and attacked our culture, as you know, and I can throw a lot of them out there, but there's the special interest groups that we're facing with, whether it's gender confusion that's going on, promoting that, our academia, our colleges. We have a niece that was in college. She's out of college now, but she would come visit us and talk about how on Fridays at their dorm they would paste condoms on their bathroom mirrors. So these things were influencing our kids heavily in many ways, and then you throw in media. One of the big ones that we've really seen a great impact, or an intense impact on, is the combination of social media and peer influence. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but on the peer influence part, we read a book that I'll recommend at the end that for some reason as a culture, we've been led to believe that we really need to help form our kids by getting them integrated with their peers, and which comes in spades through social media. And the point of this book was that this is really the first and second generation that have ever believed this. It's always been the parents being the primary orientation for their children, but we've all evolved to their peers, which has had a real negative impact. When I have these meetings with these young fathers, there was a slide I put up the first time I did this, and I said, let me guess, and I talked about all the things I just mentioned that come in and make an impact on their lives, and I said, let me guess, you're supposed to have the best job, an impressive house, you got to have all the technology, best schools, brightest children, et cetera. You can read that up there. And they sat there just dead quiet, like deer in the headlights. I kept talking, and then finally somebody raised their hand and said, this is exactly what we're dealing with. It's chaos, it's out of control, we don't know what to do about it because we feel so much pressure that we have to do this. So that's kind of a tee up. The impacts that I think we've all seen, and I've got a number of them here. People are having fewer children. I heard on radio the other day, I didn't confirm it, but I think it's pretty spot on, is our birth rate is lower than it's been since the Great Depression. When I go out and I do training and consulting, and when I meet with groups doing the training, oftentimes it'll come up, I'll talk about my family. And over the last few years, it's just blown me away because I tell them I have 4 children and they're shocked. They're horrified. They can't believe it. And then I continue on. I say, well, I have a lot of friends who have 6, 7, 8, 9, even 11 children. And it's just so foreign to them. As you know, this is a huge one. That Steve mentioned the break that I had in my career. I ran a Pinecrest Academy for 6 years. And what I saw there, even within a solid Catholic school, the impact, the frequency of broken families, whether divorced or breaking within and still married, and the impact that had on children is phenomenal. It just blew me away, the behavioral issues that came out of that. Culture of entitlement. Did any of you guys see it was going around 2 weeks ago, the Simon Sinek YouTube on millennials? It's great. It's pretty funny, and they talked about this. He talked about indirectly about this culture of entitlement, where young people, they should get rather than earn. I recommend watching that. It's a great YouTube. Narcissism. This one, and I'll talk a little bit later about athletics, about sports, but about 4 years ago, I coached the varsity team at Pinecrest Academy, and so I went to a coaches clinic that was run by all the ACC coaches. And they had a message up there, and Danny Hall delivered the message, but they were all behind it. It was all high school coaches, and he looked out at us and he said, "Coaches, you are sending us a bunch of narcissistic, self-entitled robots." He said, "We can't find team players who are out to do something bigger than themselves. They're all about showcasing themselves and me, me, me." And my view, I'm a longtime sports person. I coached high school baseball. I played. I just loved it. It was a lot of my formation, and personally, I think it's gone off the rails. That there's a great deal of deformation going on in sports now. Just quickly on this, I have a growing list now of 13 people between 8th grade and 22 years old that I'm praying for every single day because they're dealing with panic attacks, anxiety, depression, and most of them from Catholic families. And this is a huge one. As you know, this is flying everywhere, and I talked about this in the Ablaze talk I did a month or two ago about this. It's just rampant, and the thing that is amazing, and this will translate a little bit to purpose. I was talking to somebody at a conference we were at in Orlando this week, a mom who gave her 5th grade and 7th grade sons, they have iPhones, smartphones. And she was talking about how parents they have a tough time putting it down. I said, what makes you think if parents have a hard time handling these phones, a 5th grader and a 7th grader? And then we were talking about pornography, and she said, yeah, it's horrible. And I said, and guess who's giving it to them? We are. We're handing smartphones to our children, and basically we're saying, years ago, a dad might have locked it up in a cabinet so they couldn't get in. Cabinets anymore. It's right on the phone. We just hand it to them and say, hope it doesn't find you, because it will find you. So now I'm going to get off the dark and the gloom, but I'm trying to present a little bit. To me, these are the things that are hammering on us, and that we have to keep working on. And my wife and I, Kathy, we talk about the harder we work on it and the stronger we stand, the weirder we're considered. And we're like some offshoot, weird, bizarre family because we won't let our kid do this, this, and this. The solution's the family. Pope John Paul II, and in fact, I was doing adoration in there, and if you will read tomorrow's meditation in the Magnificat, speaks directly to this in a much more eloquent way. But it starts with the family, and we've heard Father Jack talk about that. So what really ignited me on purpose was a few years ago, we were in Texas, and we went to Mass. Our son lives out there. We went to Mass, and there was a priest talking, and he was admonishing his parish, huge parish, saying, folks, collectively, we are off the rails. The society's taking control of us. He was just kind of hammering on them. And he closed it with, he said, and the problem is we have too many Catholics walking around like a bunch of zombies without any purpose in their life. And that, I was big on purpose in work, and I'll talk about that in a second, but that really reignited me to say, we got to wake up and drive a purpose. So, power of purpose, and that's the whole point here. In my experience, purpose has helped to bring clarity and peace and focus in our lives. So that's what, to me, the point and what we're trying to accomplish by defining purpose. How I discovered it. I had just converted to the Catholic faith back in early 2001, I think. And I started reading these books. One of them's not a faith book, but actually aligns to our faith. The Joy of Self-Giving, or Gaudium et Spes, which is about the joy of self-giving. Pope John Paul II's Laborum Exertions, which I've read 4 times now, and Built to Last by Jim Collins. And I started reading these books, and the organization I was leading at the time at Bank of America was a huge market, about 160 people, and we were bleeding. We had just bought a bank up there, Boatman's Bank, and everybody hated because they bought out a bank. Money going out the door and people leaving, including employees. Long story short, basically we came together after I read these and I said, let's define who we are and what our purpose is. And it was a fairly long process, but we came out with, our purpose was, we are going to stop selling and serve. And we are going to be pure in our intent in everything we do. We don't care if we sell something, we're just going to focus on serving our clients and work our tails off for them. And everybody rallied around that purpose. And 13 months later, it completely flipped. And people were looking to join our organization. And the revenue was coming in and the money stopped going out. So with that, I thought, well, heck, this has got to work in my personal life and in our family life. And Kathy and I haven't really sat down and said, what are the actual words we're going to lay out? I do, because I'm choleric. She's more, it's in her head. But we really have come together, and this is basically our purpose. To love our children as Christ loves us, be present in their lives, and do everything we can to help them fulfill their human potential and get to heaven. How are we going to do that? So getting into some details, we will be the primary formators in the 4 key areas of forming the human person, and we will live simply, bringing peace and order to our lives. So that's really the defining point of what we're trying to stick to. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't, but that gives us our rudder. So a couple of practical applications so you see how it's worked in our lives. Steve mentioned my change in career. When I was at that role at Bank of America, after a year, it was actually, I knew something had to change. And it was driven by purpose. Because if you go back to the purpose, I won't click back there, but it was be present in their lives and bring peace and order. And I was in a role that I was out 3-4 nights a week. I was a leader in the market. They were talking about promoting me either to the market president, things like that. So it was, I couldn't fulfill my purpose. And so I went in one day after a year of adoration to try and figure out what I wanted to do. Every day I did adoration because there was a great radio guy there that did that and started a budding radio station. And I finally, at the end, I figured out what I have to do, and I went in and I announced that I was going to retire for my faith and my family. And it's really the back end that was unbelievable because Bank of America is a big company. The word started spreading that Swygman's leaving, he retired, blah, blah, blah. But what was most profound about it was there were men, people calling me from all over the country with comments like, I never had the courage to do this. I can't believe you did that. I should have done that. And there were a handful of men that broke down into tears saying, it's too late for me. I missed raising my kids. I wish I would have done that. So it was really a powerful impact on me and reinforced it for our family. Another one, what will our home life look like? This is where we start getting weird. I put Creekstone to Cumming. We moved from a really nice high-end neighborhood into, it's actually closer to downtown Cumming, but it's rural Cumming. Really, when you get there, it's we bought more space outside, less space inside to have a simpler life. We do not have TV. We do have Roku, so we can get to Netflix, things like that. We can stream, but we don't have TV. We tell our kids constantly, and our son Booter back there does this. We get him outside. We're not doing video games. We're not doing technology, which I'll come back to, very limited. But get outside. We do a family rosary every night, or pretty close to every night. And family time takes priority over peer time. Doesn't mean that we don't ever let them see kids. Booter will probably disagree with that, but it's really family time takes the priority. So again, aligning to our purpose, that's what's led us to that. Another big one, what school will we send them to? So these are the decisions when I'm talking to those young fathers, how are you arriving at these conclusions, these decisions? So what school will we send our kids to? We actually moved across the country twice The first time I wasn't even Catholic, but we knew we needed to send him to a truly authentic Catholic school that would align with how we're trying to form our kids. And Kathy convinced me to do that, so we moved from Richmond, Virginia to St. Louis, Missouri. And then we moved from St. Louis to Atlanta to engage in Pinecrest, where I became the executive director there. So now we quasi-homeschool with Booter at St. John Bosco, and our daughter, we homeschool her completely, all because each one of them's different, but our purpose still is to form them, and what's the best way to form them in those key areas. Technology. Again, I think I mentioned already, no, I didn't. Our children do not have smartphones, right, Booter? And we have two older children that one's out of college, one's just finishing college. We didn't let them have any phone until they were a junior in high school. There was a lot of complaining and embarrassment at school because everybody's got a phone and why don't I have one? Well, we did give them a phone when they were juniors. We gave them a flip phone. We did. What was interesting is a few months back, the whole family was together, and both of them, Sammy and Jack, made a comment that they were glad we never did that. There is so much, you just walk into anywhere, walk into a restaurant, walk through the airport, everybody's boom. Watch that Simon Sinek video because he nails that really well, talks about whether it's business meetings or families or whatever. I just can't encourage enough. Stop putting our kids into that technology. And I think Simon Sinek talks about it as well. I've seen the stats. Social media, the more they're on social media, the higher incidence of depression, period. Let's see, sports, another one. We talked about that a minute ago. So with sports, what we do is we really focus on what sport or what organization or team is going to best align to our purpose. And therefore, we look for great coaches. Booter is in a wrestling program that I think is the best program I've ever seen, athletic program I've ever seen, because they're making him a man, and they're all aligned to the virtues that we have that are priorities for our kids. We may end up choosing a sport that it doesn't drive that, but it doesn't damage it, because we know something's important, but we don't let sports dominate our lives. And we've seen so many families kind of in chaos because of sports. There was a great story this morning. Father Matthew Schmorenberg at St. Brennan's talked about, he was sitting in the chapel and some man came into him and he said, Father, I need to talk to you. He said, my son, I know the confirmation retreat is coming up, but my son has a track meet and he really needs to go to that track meet. Can I work it out so we can do something else? Father Matthew said, no. He said, well, Father, you don't understand. This is an important track meet, and my son, he wants to get a scholarship in track. And Father Matthew said, no. I mean, ultimately, what's more important? And he left, he walked away, and Father said, I don't know what he answered, but he turned to us at Mass and he said, what would you do? And my experience in coaching and being at Pinecrest Academy and stuff like that, for a lot of people, that is a really hard decision. I've seen the majority of them choose the sport. That's not necessarily a bad answer. What's your purpose? If your purpose is make them a great athlete, which is often questionable, but great, then maybe that's the answer, but what is your purpose? And then college, finally, that's a huge one. I was talking to somebody about it at this conference, and they made the comment, he said, we pay that much money to send our kids where 75% of the teachers that they're with are Marxist. And extreme liberals and they say, well, I'm paying all that tuition and that's who's teaching them. And we've experienced it with our two older children. What we did to align to our purpose is they did a mission year before they went to college. So we didn't say at that point, you can't go to a secular school, but you have to be prepared for it. You have to be formed to be able to do it. Unfortunately, there's stories of, I don't have time to tell you here, but there's stories of our son who stood up in class and challenged a teacher who was promoting to the class, mostly girls, promoting friends with benefits and the hookup culture. And our son was formed well enough and steeped in the faith that he stood up and asked for 5 minutes to talk and talk to the class about exclusivity and families going towards heaven. He said there were girls in there that were crying because they hadn't heard it before. So our purpose has helped us define how are we going to make that decision about college, because that is a huge decision that a lot of people just say, I want them to go to have the college experience. And some of you have older kids, so you probably know what the college experience is. That wouldn't be a vote of mine saying, they need that. So I'm running out. Well, I think I'm okay. I'm running out of time. You get the point, the practical application. So discerning and living your purpose. To me, there's a couple easy steps. Number one is define your purpose. For me, I define it as a husband. What is my purpose there? As a father, but most importantly, as a family. One key point there, a little hint, don't have a different purpose than your wife. That when it comes to your family, that could prove to be a little bit challenging. The Ablaze a week ago, the last Ablaze session with the Fiorentinos, there was a great example of a family living by purpose. It was the whole Sacred Heart thing, and you could see that everything they did was aligned to and driven to that. And then I also define a purpose at work as well. Step two, once you've defined that purpose, just rely on God's grace. For me, it's daily mass, it's frequent confession, it's the rosary every day, it's spiritual direction. Kathy and I can't fulfill our purpose if we're not on our knees and saying, you need to help us do that, especially, I'll come to that, and I'll come to the especially after this, but other keys to staying on track in addition to those, the sacraments, is live silence. You've heard Father Jack talk about that. I started doing that on his suggestion a few weeks ago. I drive an hour and a half home, and silence is just awesome, and I never did it. I always wondered why I thought of stuff in the shower all the time. I had great ideas in the shower, and then I realized, because that's the only place I had silence. And a daily exam is worthwhile as well to say, once you've defined your purpose, do a check and say, am I fulfilling how did I fulfill my purpose today? Easy derailers, this is what I was coming to, is it is so hard, depending on your purpose, it is so hard to stick to your purpose. And it takes courage, and you have to overcome. That's why the program for life that Father Jack has talked about is so important to understand what are your root sins and what's going to make you cave on your purpose. And the last point, the power of no. I had those young fathers I talked to, one of them came back and he said, I listened to you talk about all that travel ball and all that stuff, and he said, it really, really kind of hit me, and you told me we have to have the courage to say no. And he said, my 8-year-old boy was playing travel, but he was trying out for a travel ball team, a high-level travel ball team, and he made the team. And they have 70-some games, and they practice at 9 at night, and it was an honor to be at that team. And he said, I went to the coach, and before the first practice, he said, no, thank you. He said, the coach just about went in convulsions. And like, nobody's ever said that. You're really not going to play. And he said, no, it doesn't align with what we're trying to do as a family. And when he told me this, he came running up and he said, it was the most liberating thing I've done in years, because he actually said no to getting sucked into the culture. So I'll close with, there was the book Union with God by Blessed Columba Marmion. is a fantastic book. Read a little piece of it every morning. I'll close with a call to action. And I know a lot of what I said is kind of laying out the negative, but I think Father Jack would, as we've heard it in Blazes, those are the things attacking us. How are we going to counter it? So Columba Marmion asked this question: what spirit animates our life and work? The spirit of the world or the spirit of Christ? And to me, a call to action is, everybody in this room, I think, wants to have their lives animated by the Spirit of Christ. A suggestion on my part is start with, going back to that priest in Texas, what is your purpose? So you have focus, where you're going, to be able to make those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Oh, I get a clicker.